Okay, now we made it to page 55 of this book, Manly P. Hall, Orders of the Quest. And the point that I'm showing in reading all these books is showing in their own words, their own writings, that, they admit of conspiring to establish and create a world socialist government, many of the brotherhoods anyways, and that Mr. Hall is loaded full of admissions in his books and writings, and of a secret brotherhood, a visible hierarchy, if you will, that Alice Bailey, called, guiding the destiny of the world. Where the mainstream and everybody just says it's a conspiracy theory of, nut jobs. Well, you'll find it in their own writings, and so my goal is to have nothing but proof and nothing but evidence to their own writings and stuff like that. So, I'll let that go a little bit. I always find some of this music that I'm using appropriate to the subject, of course, because this is dark subjects, and so if you think about the whole picture and everything, it can be kind of bleak and scary. So hence I'm using the theme past couple videos of Universal classic monster themes like Frankenstein, Dracula, and the Mummy. Of course, the Mummy especially, right? Because that has that old ancient Egyptian mystery school stuff in it, and subject matter. Okay, so I'm on 55 of Orders of the Quest. Merlin the Magician. Oh yeah, I did want to share, before I read here, to anyone wanting to defend Manly P. Hall. Here's a quote I found by him. This is a whole book on Q&A, questions and answers on what he thinks of, the occult, mystery schools, or reincarnation, any question under the sun, I guess. And well, he just happened to say this on page 202 concerning eugenics. What is your advice in the matters of eugenics and birth control? And it has been advanced that the sterilization of the unfit would be a major step forward in coping with degeneracy and disease. From an occult standpoint, I cannot see that this would violate any fundamental law. In the first place, it would improve the general tone of society, giving a better grade of entities opportunities to incarnate, and in the second place, it would not limit the incarnation of lower grades of entities, since there are innumerable divisions among the lower brackets of civilization for the incoming of less evolved types. Actually, degeneracy is not natural. That which is natural is right, and it is natural that man, coming into incarnation, should find a reasonably healthy vehicle for his manifestation. And he goes to say this at the end, page 203. A wider teaching of the principles of eugenics and birth control, particularly among poorer people of society, could only result in better homes, better advantages for both parents and children. The sterilization of the unfit, you remember that shit? Go look it up in history. Yeah, so don't give me that bullshit that Manly P. Hall was this great champion of liberty and freedom. In some of his writings, it seems like he was. Well, we can find some good quotes from Alice Bailey. You can find some good quotes, good things that Aleister Crowley said amidst all his psychotic, crazy, sick, fucking ravings and mumbo jumbo. You could probably find some things that Charles Manson has said that makes sense, or that's good. I mean, everybody does. So that's not, something that's not a good argument to use, to say that, well, he talked about this and that and so forth. No, but he was in agreement with the sterilization of the unfit and the eugenics. Thought it was a good idea, and other secret societies too, by the way. Talk about how they were into that. You know, they agreed to have a Rosicrucian Digest article. You know, talking about how it was good for Hitler for his eugenics policies, whatever, and that these kind of eugenics policies should be enacted globally. They believe and felt. So there you go. Yeah. Yep. Irrefutable. And by the way, just before I go on here, it's right around here. So if you want to read that paragraph down below, he sounds just like the pro-birth control, pro-population control globalist leftist today. Shouldn't say leftist because that's fallen into their false left-right paradigm, but you know what I mean. I mean, he wasn't all the way in disagreement with communism too, vocally in this book too. So hopefully you read that. Some of my videos don't have the best visual quality, I notice, even though it looks different while this is on right now. But I'll provide the quote, and if you just want to buy the book and just read it yourself, you know, read it yourself, and then share the stuff with people who don't know. This guy was Freemason approved by the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. So Merlin the magician. Who is the mysterious Merlin? This is page 55. Held prisoner in a house of air or mist, to finally vanish into the earth, attended by 9 bards, and taking with him the 13 treasures of Britain. It is quite in line with modern policy that recent scholars, after reviewing the legends and fables which surround this magician, should solemnly conclude that he is entirely mythological. It never seems to occur to this learned gentry that myths may have secret meanings and should be examined in the light of the religions and philosophies in which they originate. According to the most common account, Merlin was born of an immaculate conception during the reign of Vortigern, king of Britain, who ruled in the 5th century AD. In a strange book entitled Merlin, surnamed Ambrosius, published anonymously in London in 1813, it is reported that he was conceived by the compression of a fantastical creature without a body. That's interesting. His mother was a royal virgin, daughter of King Domitius. A similar account appears in that most curious work, Comte de Gabalis. Comte, that's C-O-M-T-E-D-D-E, and Gabalis, G-A-B-A-L-I-S, which was first printed in 1684. Here it is stated that the father of Merlin was an elemental spirit of the order of Silps, and his mother a Christian nun. The place of Merlin's birth is not known, but it is generally supposed to have been in England or Wales. Charles W. Heckthorne, however, says he was born on the island of Sina in Gaul, this being one of the last strongholds of the Druidic mysteries. Merlin was baptized hastily in order to preserve him against the occult circumstances of his own birth, but throughout life he combined in his person the humanity of his mother and the unearthly quality of his submundane father. While still a small boy, Merlin was brought to the court of Vortigern, where he confounded the priestly astrologers and made several extraordinary predictions that later proved to be entirely accurate. During the reign of Aurelius Ambrose, who succeeded Vortigern, Merlin is said to have brought the mighty stones of Stonehenge from Ireland to the plains of Salisbury in a single night. This monument had originally been set up in Africa and had been conveyed to Ireland by unknown means at a remote time. Merlin delivered the stones in Wiltshire by a whirlwind and placed them as they now stand over the graves of British lords slain through treachery. Certainly this report cannot be taken literally, but if we understand by the circle of ancient stones, the symbol of a lodge of Druid initiates, the legend immediately has meaning. The Romans did not invade Ireland, and the pagan mysteries were practiced there long after they had been destroyed in Britain. Merlin also served the next king, Uther Pendragon, whose name means the head of the dragon. He served Uther as counselor and magician through the 7 years of his reign, and by his enchantment made possible the birth of the hero king, Arthur the Boar of Cornwall. Arthur was the son of Uther Pendragon and Igerna, Duchess of Cornwall. Much is made of the fact that the earliest historical records of King Arthur contain none of the mystical elements with which we are now familiar. There is no mention of the Holy Grail, the Round Table, or the magic sword Caliburn, or Excalibur, which was fashioned in the land of the fairies. But the early legends do say that Merlin the magician was with Arthur at his court at Caerleon on Usk. That is spelled Caerleon-on-Usk. So, guiding the young king with wise counsel. Some writers have attempted to solve the historical problems by assuming that both Merlin and Arthur were gods of an old mystery cult. In this vein, Lewis Spence writes, quote, "It is plain that he, Arthur, like Osiris, is the god of a mystical cult who must periodically take a journey through the underworld, not only for the purpose of subduing its evil inhabitants, but of learning their secrets and passwords in order that the souls of the just, the perfected initiates, will be enabled to journey through that plane unharmed. That Arthur and Osiris are indeed figures originating in a common source must be reasonably clear to the student of the myth. Druidism is only the cult of Osiris in another form, and Arthur seems to have a common origin with Osir or Osiris. Unfortunately, the facts are somewhat more complicated. The Osiris myth itself is but a fragment out of context. It can never be understood by those who assume that legends wander up and down the world willy-nilly, imposing themselves upon themselves in endless confusion. Certainly, the Arthurian cycle is part of the initiate tradition, but the key to it lies not in distant lands, but in some deep hidden place within the structure of human consciousness. Merlin, like all these mysterious mythological sages, is the secret doctrine itself, born of heaven and earth, and locked within a house of glass, the sphere of illusion. He is not some old Cymric demigod under a new name, but a personification of an order of learning. In all probability, there was a historical Merlin, perhaps several old Welsh bards, soothsayers, have been combined to form the legend. But the true story of Merlin the man will never be known, for it was never recorded. The Merlin of the myth is the adept, whose identity has been absorbed into the universal mystery of human regeneration. The great school is personified in each of its initiates. This is why the heroes of all nations pass through the same experiences. There is only one experience that can lead to truth, and there is only one description appropriate to those who have accomplished the divine adventure. Of course, all esoteric biographies are perpetuated in symbolic form, for it is impossible to put into simple words those mysteries of the spirit that are not of this world. There is a secret legend that Merlin's invisible father moved through the ethereal atmosphere in the form of a serpent. The archdruids of Britain and Gaul were the winged serpents, and their most sacred symbol was the serpent's egg, a symbol of both the universe and the mystery school. Okay, the serpent egg is a symbol of the universe and the mystery school. The Immaculate Conception was the second birth from this philosophic egg, or the womb of the mysteries. The magician is the master of illusion and the oracle of nature. This priestly adept is the ruler over all the rulers of the world by divine right. In the case of Merlin, the adept brought the circle of the living stones to Salisbury, not the monolithic rocks that now strew its plain, but the Jorsed, the throne of the revelation of the ancient ones of the earth. The Gorsedd of the Druids became the Round Table of King Arthur. The Gorsedd, that's the Gorsedd. The Gorsedd or Jorsed of the Druids became the Round Table of King Arthur. There is no break in the mystical descent, for the young king takes the place of the old king. Long live the king! At first it seems that the magical cauldron of Cerridwen gave place to the Grail, and that the old pagan mysteries faded away before the light of Christendom. But exactly the reverse was true. The ancient wisdom ensouled the new faith, and the Holy Grail became the cauldron of Cerridwen. Merlin sleeps in his glass tomb like the mysterious Father CRC of the Rosy Cross, who is said to lie quickening in a womb of crystal. The dying King Arthur floats away to Avalon in a ship of glass. Each will return to life in its proper time, for he is not dead but sleeping. The sleeping hero is the adept self-locked within the mortal form of nature, a form which appears to reveal everything and at the same time conceals everything. We look about us and nothing seems hidden, but so little is understood. We are all prisoners in a crystal sphere. The universe itself is the geometrical vault, the many-sided tomb in which lies buried the hero of the world, awaiting the resurrection. In the Druidic rites of initiation, the candidate was placed in a coffin as one dead, and after 3 degrees, symbolically days, he was restored to life and accepted into the communion of the reborn ones, the initiates. According to Caesar, the Druids would never commit to writing their secret knowledge about the universe and its laws. It was not necessary, for they perpetuated their esoteric doctrines through the songs and poems of their bards. Whoever can read aright the myth of Merlin will understand the hidden place 4 square in the island of the Strong Door. Okay, the Arthurian cycle. Walter Mapes, who died about 1209 at an advanced age, was the outstanding English literator and humorist at the court of King Henry II. From the meager records of his life, he seems to have been, at least indirectly, associated with the troubadours. He is often referred to as an ecclesiastic and certainly held several benefices, but there is no direct record of his ordination. At one time, Map was clerk of the royal household and Justus Itinerant. He studied in Paris, attended the Lateran Council at Rome, and traveled extensively. Although it is believed that Map was responsible for linking the legend of King Arthur with the Grail cycle, cautious researchers are inclined to question the popular account. The Justus Itinerant was a busy man, and it is quite possible that such lengthy and involved legends as Lancelot, Mort Artus, and The Quest were the productions of a group rather than an individual. It appears likely that Walter Map was responsible for the transplanting of certain romances of chivalry from the continent to the British Isles and mingling them with the streams of English folklore. The Arthurian cycle begins with Merlin, Merlin the Wise, Merlin the Wild, Merlin the Bard, and Merlin the Mad. Dr. St. Humphreys Gertine, in introducing the character of Merlin, writes, quote, "In point of time, he appears upon the stage long before King Arthur. His famous exploits reaching back even to the reign of Vortigern. He also represents the intellect of the world as depicted in these poems, while Arthur represents simply its physical force. It is to the necromantic skill and wise counsels of Merlin that the king owes his birth, his crown, his order of Round Table Knights, and his victories. It is Merlin who, as court prophet and counselor, predicts the grandest events in the life of his sovereign, and without whose advice no affair of moment is undertaken. When Arthur was born, he was wrapped in cloth of gold, and in fulfillment of an oath made by his father, Uther was taken to the gate of the castle and given into the keeping of Merlin. Arthur did not appear again in the legend until Uther, on his deathbed, acknowledged his son and recommended him to the barons as their rightful king. When the proper time came, Merlin, by his magic, caused to appear in the Cathedral Church of London, before the high altar, a large stone with an anvil of steel upon it and a sword thrust into the anvil. Beneath, in letters of gold, was the inscription, quote, "Whoso pulleth out this sword of this stone and anvil is rightwise king, born of England," unquote. Only Arthur could draw forth the sword, in this way proving his right to the succession. We are reminded of Notung, the sword of the Volsungs, which Odin thrusts into the oak, and which only Sigmund could draw from the tree. The sword trial represents the release of the will from bondage to the material elements, signified by the anvil and the stone. Parallels in other esoteric traditions indicate that the test of the sword symbolizes initiation. Most interpreters of the Arthurian cycle assume that it was devised by bards and travers merely for the entertainment of high lords and ladies. Even those who acknowledge the possibility that the legends of Charlemagne and his 12 paladins may have been transferred to the British climb have not sensed any serious purpose behind the circumstance. It is so easy to be deceived by the obvious, especially when the historian has no sympathy for the esoteric tradition. Arthur ruled over a court of heroes, much as Odin, the all-father of the Draughts, presided as at the councils of the 12. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce that word without kind of sounding silly. Presided at the councils of the 12 asses. Well, I guess it's appropriate. In the great court at Asgard, Asgard. King Arthur, like Siegfried, emerges as a type of the culture hero. As Hercules performed 12 labors, so Arthur fought 12 battles in the service of God and Britain. He was betrayed by one of his own trusted knights, as Odin perished with his asses, or whatever the heck, ASES, on the plain of Ragnarok. I think they had a Thor sequel come out with a sequel with that title. Ragnarok. 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 Yeah. So Arthur and most of his knights fell at the Battle of Camlan. With the hero perished his great order of the quest, the Mortar d'Arthurs describes the passing of the king and how his body was borne away to Avalon in a black ship. Arthur was crowned King of Britain AD 516, and he died AD 542 in the 41st year of his life. On the field of Camlan, the forces of light and darkness perished together, and the whole story is a thinly veiled account of the fall of the pagan mysteries. Gertine includes in his work a diagram of the Arthurian epic cyclus, according to the narrative of the Anglo-Norman Travers. The figure is so important that we reproduce it herewith. The identification of Merlin with the intellect of the world is a simple and direct key to the Neoplatonism and Gnosticism underlying this entire cycle of legend symbolism. You see here all the movies that we've been watching, like the movie I just mentioned, Thor, Ragnarok, and these stories of the superheroes, even the Avengers, and even going back with other movies, these subjects regarding King Arthur and stuff. That was all esoteric stories of theirs. I guess for the purposes of brainwashing us? I guess. That would be a big surprise. It will be seen from the diagram that an order of spiritual descent begins with Merlin, passes to Arthur, and is consummated in the maiden knight, Galahad. A parallel is found in the cycle of Grail Kings, Titurel, Amfortas, and Percival, and in the Gothic descent of Odin, Sigmund, and Siegfried. Lancelot du Lac was the foster son of Vivian, a nymph. She may be the same as the mysterious Lady of the Lake who gave Arthur the sword Excalibur, which had been fashioned for him by Merlin in his subterranean forge. Lancelot, like Sigmund, was unable to accomplish the quest of the Grail because of his sin against the sanctity of marriage. Like Sigmund also, he became the father of a spiritual hero, in this case, Galahad. And I think I'm going to put this up. It's my second video, and I haven't cleared my storage yet. I don't just want this to just go bloop, and that's it. So, yep, learning a lot. And, So after I get done with this book, I have, I'm going to pick some publications. I have a Masonic publication that I found that all the way back from the early 20s called The Dream of the Ages. You know, what's that? The New World Utopia. And just to leave you with a quote, Manly P. Hall: the international nation it once created would become so interdependent that it would be impossible for its parts ever to separate and engage in warfare. The international nation, New World Order, would require no armaments. A sufficient policing system could be created by which minor factions that might insist on belligerent attitudes could be quickly brought into line. This international army of police could be made up of a certain number of selected men from each nation. If for any reason, and I'm just going down and reading the various parts of, I don't want to read the whole shebang because I'm trying to get to the point. If for any reason a nation should insist upon retiring, meaning trying to draw from the international nation, the New World Order, and wish to withdraw its troops from the international police, it should be at liberty to do so, but no nation could hope to stand out against the solid body of the whole, meaning that it would suffer greatly. So, okay. Wish I could find that quote by Manly P. Hall. But, oh well. I mean, so, yep. Not a conspiracy theory at all. Take care.